The night shift at Harbor's Edge Medical Center was supposed to be routine for Rebecca Walker. After 15 years as an ER nurse, she thought she'd seen everything. But when she noticed a disturbing pattern in recent trauma cases, she had no idea her documentation would threaten a massive criminal enterprise. Now zip-tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse surrounded by the road demons motorcycle gang, Rebecca faced the consequences of her discovery. But Victor Steele Kincaid and his crew had made one fatal miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with just another nurse who knew too much. They had no idea that the quiet single mom they'd kidnapped had a son who'd spent the last 8 years becoming one of the deadliest Navy SEALs in the service. Some mistakes you only make once, and underestimating a mother's importance to her son was about to become the road demon's last. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of Harbor's Edge Medical Center's emergency room cast harsh shadows across Rebecca Walker's face as she reviewed patient charts from her last 3 shifts. Something wasn't adding up. 4 trauma patients in 10 days, all with similar injuries, all refusing to explain how they got hurt. But it was their blood work that caught her attention. Traces of the same immunosuppressant drugs in their systems. Rebecca James Chen's voice startled her. The chief of staff stood in the doorway of the small break room, his usual composed demeanor showing signs of strain. It's almost midnight. Your shift ended an hour ago. She gestured to the charts spread across the table. James, look at these labs. All 4 patients showing traces of tachus. That's not coincidence. Sometimes patterns are just patterns. His response came too quickly, his eyes not quite meeting hers. These aren't organ transplant patients. They shouldn't have these drugs in their system at all. She pulled up another file on her tablet and looked at their admission dates, all within hours of when those private medical transport flights landed at the marina. Stop digging, Rebecca. The edge in his voice made her look up. Please, for your own good. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from David, her son. Made it back stateside, got some leave coming up, thought I might come home for a few weeks. A smile crossed her face as she typed back, your room's waiting always. The exchange reminded her why she'd raised her son alone, taught him to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. She looked back at Chen. If something illegal is happening in my ER, I need to know. What you need is to go home, get some rest, forget about these cases. He reached for the charts, but she pulled them back. I'm taking copies home, going to review them properly. Rebecca, what are you afraid of? James. His answer came in a whisper. You have no idea what you're walking into. Please, just let it go. The drive home along Harbor's Edge's waterfront should have been peaceful. Moonlight silvered the waves, fishing boats bobbed at their moorings, and the salty air carried the familiar scent of the sea. But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling of being watched inside her modest colonial home. She spread the charts across her kitchen table. 8 years of raising David alone after his father died had taught her to trust her instincts. Something was wrong at the hospital, and she needed to figure out what. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from David. Got something to tell you. When I see you finally made. Lieutenant Commander. Pride swelled in her chest as she replied, always knew you would like father likes son. 3 sharp knocks at her front door made her jump through the peephole. She saw Chen looking agitated. James, what are you? He pushed past her into the house. They know you copied the files. They're coming. Who's coming? What's going on? The road demons. They've been watching the hospital, watching you. He ran his hands through his gray hair. I tried to warn you. The motorcycle gang. What do they have to do with understanding? Dawn. The private flights, the immunosuppressants, they're trafficking organs. Headlights swept across her living room windows as multiple motorcycles pulled up outside back door. She said, grabbing her phone. Now they made it halfway across her backyard before the first figure stepped out of the shadows. Victor's steel concave's leather cut gleamed in the moonlight, the road demon's patch visible even in the darkness. Evening, folks. His voice carried the false friendliness of a predator toying with prey. Nice night for a walk. More bikers emerged from the darkness surrounding them. Rebecca's mind raced. David had taught her some self-defense moves during his visits home, but against 8 armed men. Miss Walker. Steele moved closer. We need to have a conversation about patient confidentiality. This is about more than medical. Records, isn't it? She kept her voice steady. Despite her racing heart, you're using the hospital, somehow the private flights, the unusual blood work. Smart lady. Steele's smile didn't reach his eyes. Too smart for your own good. Chen stepped forward. She doesn't know anything concrete. I made sure the gunshot was deafening in the quiet neighborhood. Chen crumpled, clutching his shoulder. James. Rebecca moved to help him, but strong hands grabbed her arms. Get them both in the van, Steele ordered quietly, and find those files. As they dragged her toward a waiting vehicle, Rebecca managed to press her phone's emergency button, a special configuration David had set up designed to send him her GPS location and a distress signal. She didn't know if he'd get it in time, didn't even know if he was in a position to help. But she taught him to never give up, to always fight for what's right. Now she had to do the same. The van door slammed shut, plunging her into darkness as they drove through Harbor's Edge's empty streets. Rebecca's thoughts went to her son 8 years ago. She'd watched him leave for SEAL training, proud but terrified now, zip-tied in the back of a van. She remembered his last words before deploying: "Don't worry, Mom, I learned from the best how to handle the tough situations." She just hoped she could handle this one long enough for help to arrive, because somewhere out there a Navy SEAL was about to discover that someone had made the mistake of threatening his mother, and David Walker didn't make empty promises about protecting family. Lieutenant Commander David Walker stood at attention in the Admiral's office at Naval Station Norfolk, concluding his mission to brief, when his secure phone vibrated with a distinct beep pattern, one he'd hoped he'd never feel: the emergency signal from his mother. At 26, David had already distinguished himself as one of the youngest SEAL team leaders in the service. But right now, none of his accolades mattered. The only thing that registered was the GPS coordinates appearing on his phone screen: Harbor's Edge, Maine. His mother's location was moving fast. "Sir," he interrupted the Admiral mid-sentence. "Family emergency protocol." Admiral Harrison's expression shifted from annoyance to understanding as he recognized the code phrase, "Go take whatever you need." David was already moving, his tactical mind processing variables. His mother Rebecca had raised him alone since he was 8, working 12-hour shifts as an ER nurse to give him every opportunity. At 46, she was still the strongest person he knew. If she'd activated the emergency signal, something was seriously wrong. His phone rang as he reached his truck. "Walker, it's Santos." Detective Maya Santos' voice carried urgency. "We got a situation at Harbor's Edge Medical. Dark Chen's missing, signs of a struggle at your mother's house, and the road demons are mobilizing." "What do the road demons want with my mother?" "She's been investigating something at the hospital, pattern of patients with unusual blood work connected to private flights at the marina." "David, this looks organized profession." He gunned the engine, heading north. "How deep are you into the road demons?" "State Police Task Force has been building a case for months. They're not just running drugs anymore. Something bigger is happening, but we can't prove it. Every time we get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses go quiet." "Get me everything you have on their operations, known locations, membership patterns." "Already sending it." "But David, there's something else. Federal agencies are sniffing around. They're interested in those private flights your mom noticed." David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How long until local police can respond?" "That's another problem. Sheriff Cooper's been compromised. Half the departments on the road demons payroll, the ones who aren't, are being watched." His tactical radio crackled responses from his team members already deploying to Harbor's Edge. 8 years in the SEALs had taught him the value of having people you can trust. "Absolutely." "Your mother's GPS signal stopped moving," Santos reported. "Old Kaner District Building C7. "How many road demons are we talking about?" "Full strength, 30 patch members, maybe 15 prospects." But David Victor Conk, their president, he's not just some biker, ex-military special forces background. He runs the club like a tactical unit. David accessed the files Santos had sent, studying surveillance photos as he drove. The road demons compound was well-organized: security cameras, scheduled patrols, not typical biker gang behavior. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Your mother's very observant, Commander Walker. Too observant. Stand down, or what happens next is on you." "They know who I am," he told Santos. "That's impossible. Your service record is classified. Someone has access. High level." He pressed harder on the accelerator. "Maya, my mother's been working ER for 20 years. What did she notice that scared them this badly? Give me an hour. I'll pull all her recent cases." Through his earpiece, he heard his team coordinating. 3 hours. until they'd be in position. His mother didn't have that long. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Walker, a new voice on his secure line. Admiral Harrison, just got a call from someone very high up, very interested in what's happening in Harbor's Edge. These road demons, they're connected to something bigger, something that's got alphabet agencies. Nervous, sir. They have my mother. I know, son, that's why I'm calling. Whatever she stumbled onto, it goes deep. We're tracking unusual movement patterns along the entire coast. Private medical flights, specialized cargo, high-level military involvement. David's tactical mind. Connected dots. Organ trafficking. Maybe, but why involve ex-military personnel? Why risk federal attention? There's something else, something bigger. The main state line appeared ahead as sunset painted the sky blood red. David's GPS showed 2 hours to Harbor's Edge. His mother had taught him to analyze problems methodically, like she did with difficult diagnosis. Look at all the symptoms, find the underlying cause through his earpiece. His team reported more details. The road demons had cleared civilians from the Kincaid district. Professional perimeter security, military-grade communications equipment. Not normal gang behavior. His phone buzzed again. Last warning, Commander, some secrets are worth killing for. Ask yourself why a motorcycle gang needs a trauma nurse's expertise. Santos came back on the line. David, I found something. Those patients your mom flagged, they all had specialized implanted medical devices that aren't FDA approved, aren't even in any medical database, and the shipping manifests from those private flights. They match specifications for experimental medical equipment. The pieces started forming a darker picture, not just organ trafficking, something experimental, something that required professional medical supervision. Maya, get me blueprints of that cannery and find out everything you can about those medical devices, what they're designed for, who's making them. Already on it. But David, your mother, she's not just a witness anymore. If she's seen what I think she's seen, I know. His voice carried cold certainty. They won't let her walk away. The sun disappeared beyond the horizon as David Walker raced toward Harbor's Edge in the Kincaid district. Rebecca Walker sat bound to a chair, still analyzing, still observing, still gathering information that could expose something bigger than anyone suspected. She'd raised her son to stand up against injustice, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She taught him to look deeper, think smarter, fight harder. Now those lessons were coming full circle. The road demons thought they were dealing with a troublesome nurse who knew too much. They were about to learn that threatening Rebecca Walker meant dealing with something far more dangerous. A son who'd spent 8 years becoming a weapon, and a mother whose determination to expose the truth matched his training, to uncover it through his tactical comms. David heard his team's final preparations. Soon the road demons would learn why some families are more dangerous than others. But first he had to figure out what his mother had discovered, what secret was worth killing to protect. In the dim light of the abandoned Kincaid, Rebecca Walker studied her surroundings with the same methodical attention she developed through 20 years of emergency room triage. The zip ties securing her to the metal chair had been applied professionally, tight enough to prevent escape, loose enough to prevent nerve damage. These weren't amateur criminals. They knew how to keep prisoners alive. Der Chen lay on a makeshift cot nearby, his gunshot wound professionally dressed. They'd wanted him alive too. The question was why those patient files. Chen spoke softly, his voice strained. The ones you noticed. Did you see the surgery dates? All within 6 hours of the private flights landing, Rebecca confirmed. But it was the recovery times that didn't make sense. Major organ procedures showing full healing in days instead of weeks. Steel Kincaid emerged from the shadows, slow, clapping. Smart lady, too smart. He pulled up a chair, straddling it backward. So let's talk about what you think you know. I know you're not just trafficking organs. Rebecca kept her voice steady, remembering David's lessons about handling interrogation. Stay calm, gather information, keep them talking. The immunosuppressant cocktails were wrong for standard transplants. You're doing something else, something experimental. You've got no idea what you're mixed up in. Steele lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating surgical scars on his neck, recent ones. This is bigger than some backwoods biker gang running contraband. We're part of something revolutionary. Outside, more motorcycles arrived through the high windows. Rebecca could see armed men establishing guard positions with military precision. Not typical biker behavior, the medical devices, she pressed, noting Steele's reaction. They're not just transplant monitoring equipment. Are they? The interface patterns are all wrong. They're more like neural connections. Steele's expression shifted, slightly surprised. Quickly masked, she'd hit something important. Did they tell you what you're really guarding? She asked. What those devices are actually for. Before he could respond, a new figure entered, a man in an expensive suit, looking out of place among the bikers. That's enough questions, M. Walker. His voice carried cultured authority. Though I must admit your analytical skills are impressive. I see where your son gets his intelligence. Rebecca's heart skipped. They knew about David Dar Fleming. Still acknowledged, standing. We were just ignoring protocol, about engaging with subjects. Fleming moved closer, studying Rebecca like a specimen. Though perhaps this is fortunate. We've been looking for someone with her qualifications. Meanwhile, Detective Santos sat in her marked car near the Kaner district, coordinating with David's approaching team through secured channels. Security is military grade. She reported motion sensors, infrared signal jamming. Whatever they're protecting, it's not just drugs or organs. Her laptop displayed surveillance photos, medical equipment being unloaded from private planes, patients being transported under heavy guard, and most disturbing, shipping containers modified into mobile surgical units. David, she spoke into her encrypted line. Those medical devices your mother flagged, they're classified technology, Pentagon Black Projects level classified. I had to call in serious favors just to confirm they exist. David's voice came back tense. What are they? Designed for human enhancement, experimental integration of synthetic systems with organic tissue. But these versions aren't official military prototypes. Someone's taking classified research and pushing it further than authorized protocols allow. Inside the cannery, Fleming circled Rebecca's chair. Your recent cases, those patients you noticed, they're pioneers, volunteers for the next stage of human evolution. But the process is complicated. We need experienced trauma care specialists for the integration procedures. You want me to help you experiment on people? Rebecca's medical ethics revolted at the idea. We want you to help advance medical science. By decades, Fleming corrected. Imagine neural interfaces that can bypass spinal injuries, synthetic organ systems that never fail, soldiers who can heal from lethal injuries in days instead of months by using unauthorized experimental tech on desperate people. She glanced at Chen. Is that why you involve the hospital access to potential volunteers? Fleming smiled coldly. The road demons provide security and screening. The hospital provides facilities and deniability. And now hopefully you'll provide your expertise voluntarily. Ideally, we'd hate to have to use more persuasive methods. Through her window, Rebecca saw more vehicles arriving, not motorcycles this time, but black SUVs with darkened windows, men in tactical gear deployed with professional efficiency. Your son Fleming continued. Lieutenant Commander Walker, decorated SEAL, remarkable service record. Imagine what our enhancements could do for soldiers like him. Help us perfect the process. And he could become something beyond human. You don't know my son. Rebecca's voice carried steel of its own, or what he's already capable of on the coastal highway. David received Santos's latest update. His tactical team was in position, gathering intel through thermal imaging and signal intercepts. The situation was worse than expected. Private military contractors mixed with road demons members, creating a professional security force around the Kaner target building, has been modified. His team reported medical equipment, surgical suite. Looks like some kind of research facility, multiple armed personnel. Wait, we're picking up a new signal, some kind of energy signature. We can't identify the medical devices. Santos cut in. They must be active. David, if they're testing experimental tech in there, my mother's involvement makes sense. He finished. They need someone with trauma experience to monitor the procedures. His voice hardened. And now they'll want to keep her permanently. A new transmission came through his secure channel. Admiral Harrison, David, situation's bigger than we thought. Just got word from Joint Special Operations Command. Those medical devices, they're part of a classified program that went dark 3 years ago. Someone's continuing the research off the books, pushing it beyond ethical and safety protocols. They're using the road demons as cover. David realized who'd look for classified military research in a biker gang's territory. Inside the cannery, Fleming laid out photographs, combat injuries, miraculously healed paraplegics. Walking again, mortal wounds reversed through impossible medical advances. You've seen what standard medicine can do, Miss Walker. Now imagine what you could achieve with our resources, the power to truly heal, to push beyond human limitations. All we need is your expertise to refine the integration process. Rebecca studied the photos with her trained medical eye, seeing both the miraculous results and the horrific failures Fleming wasn't showing. And if I refuse, then you become a test subject instead of a colleague. Fleming's cultured tone didn't change, though. I should mention we've already planned a procedure for Dirk Chen. Perhaps observing his integration process will help you make the right decision. Outside, David's team moved into final positions. The sun had fully set, and Harbor's Edge's night fog was rolling in perfect cover for what was coming. 1 hour until we're ready, his team leader reported. But sir, these guys are serious players, military training, high-tech equipment. This won't be a simple extraction. David checked his weapon, remembering his mother's words from years ago. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones where you have to save others from their own choices. The road demons thought they were protected by their military contractors and classified technology. They didn't realize they were about to face something more dangerous than any experimental enhancement. A son determined to save his mother, and a mother who'd already proven she was willing to risk everything to expose the truth. The fog rolling in from Harbor's Edge's coast provided perfect cover as David's team moved into position. Through their thermal imaging, they watched multiple heat signatures inside the Kaner guards patrolling and military formation, medical equipment humming with unusual energy signatures. And in the central area, 2 figures seated, one his mother, the other presumably Dr. Chen. Target buildings been modified extensively. His team's tech specialist reported picking up power usage consistent with a small hospital. They've turned this place into a black site research facility. Detective, his voice came through his earpiece. David, you need to see this. She transmitted images to his tactical display, hospital security footage from last month. Watch the time stamps. The video showed a patient being wheeled in with catastrophic injuries from a car crash. Injuries nobody should survive. 3 days later, the same patient walked out under his own power. That's impossible, David muttered. It gets worse. Santos continued. That patient, former Delta Force. Now he's working security for the road demons. Whatever they're doing in there, it's not just healing people, they're creating something else inside the cannery. Rebecca watched as Fleming's team prepared for what they called an integration procedure. Dirk Chen had been moved to a sophisticated surgical suite that looked completely out of place in the abandoned building. The medical equipment was unlike anything she'd seen in 20 years of emergency medicine. The first generation of integrations had a high failure rate, Fleming explained, seemingly eager to share his work with a medical professional. The human body rejected the synthetic components, but by combining classified biotechnology with targeted genetic modification, we've achieved something remarkable. He activated a holographic display showing cellular structures Rebecca had never seen before, human tissue interwoven with microscopic mechanical components. Your background in trauma medicine is crucial, he continued. The integration process puts enormous stress on the subject's system. We need someone who can keep them stable through the transformation. You mean someone to keep them alive while you experiment on them, Rebecca corrected her medical ethics, wearing with her fascination at the technology. How many have died during these procedures? Progress requires sacrifice, Fleming dismissed. But imagine the possibilities. Soldiers who can heal instantly, operatives with superhuman capabilities. The next stage of human evolution. Outside, David's team intercepted radio communications between the road demons and their military contractors. The guards were professional, coordinating with practiced efficiency, but they had one critical weakness. They didn't know they were already surrounded. Sir, his team's sniper reported, got eyes on multiple enhanced subjects. Their heat signatures are wrong, showing patterns I've never seen before. Through his scope, David watched one of the guards lift a metal barrel that had to weigh several hundredfold with unnatural ease. Another moved with impossible speed. During a perimeter check, these weren't normal opponents. Remember, he instructed his team, we're here for my mother and Dirk Chen. Everything else is secondary. Once we have them, the federal task force can handle the cleanup. About that, Santos cut in. Just got word from upstairs. They don't want a cleanup, they want evidence. Whatever's happening here, someone very high up once it documented not destroyed inside Fleming's team began prepping Chen for surgery, Rebecca watched with growing horror as they attached monitoring devices that seemed to merge with his flesh. On contact, the nanites prepare the tissue for integration. Fleming narrated, clearly proud of his work. They create a matrix that allows organic and synthetic systems to interface seamlessly. The pain, unfortunately, is considerable, hence the need for your expertise in trauma care. Chen's vital signs were already showing dangerous strain. Rebecca's medical training screamed at her to intervene to stop this unethical procedure, but her tactical thinking, honed by years of emergency room crisis, told her to wait to gather more information. The road demons she probed, keeping Fleming talking. They're not just security, are they? They're test subjects, crude ones, but yes, ex-military members looking for enhancement, criminals willing to risk experimental procedures for superhuman abilities. Their organization provides perfect cover for our work. Who'd suspect a motorcycle gang of running a classified research program? David's voice came through Santos's secure line. We've got a problem. These enhanced subjects' regular takedown protocols might not work, and if they've got more of those medical devices in there, noted, she replied. But David, there's something else. Just traced some of Fleming's funding. It's not just private money or black budget stuff. There are patterns that suggest her transmission cut off abruptly through his tactical display. David watched multiple new heat signatures approaching the Canner professional tactical teams, moving with military precision. Sir, his team's communications expert reported picking up new radio traffic. These aren't road demons or their contractors. Different encryption, different protocols. Whoever they are, they're serious players inside. Rebecca noticed the shift in Fleming's demeanor as he checked his phone. The cultured scientist mask slipped, showing something colder beneath. Tim Taze moved up. He announced, prepare M. Walker for integration. If she won't assist voluntarily, she can advance the program as a subject. The medical team approached with the same biotechnology they'd attached to Chen. But before they reached her, alarms blared throughout the facility. One of Fleming's tablets showed security camera feeds, multiple teams converging on the Canner, some clearly government, others something else. Secure the research, Fleming ordered, and start the integration process now. As they reached for her with devices designed to rewrite human biology, Rebecca met Fleming's eyes. You really should have checked my background more carefully. Oh, his confidence wavered slightly. And why is that? Because in about 30 seconds you're going to learn why nobody threatens a Navy SEAL's mother. Outside, David gave the signal. His team had identified all the enhanced guards, mapped their patrol patterns, and found the facile vulnerabilities. Now it was time to show Fleming, the road demons, and whoever else was coming, that some forces were more powerful than experimental enhancement, like a son's determination to protect his mother and a mother's courage in exposing the truth. The night air filled with the sound of breaching charges as multiple teams converged on the Canner. The road demons' enhanced guards prepared to defend their facility with superhuman abilities. But they were about to learn that technology wasn't everything. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon was the combination of a mother's intelligence and a son's training working together to expose a conspiracy that went deeper than anyone suspected. The first explosion hit the Canary's north side, precisely where David's team had identified the power supply for the experimental medical equipment. As emergency generators kicked in, Rebecca watched Fleming's composed facade crack. Get the mobile surgical unit ready, he barked into his radio, and trigger the enhancement protocols on all active subjects. Full combat upgrade around the facility. Members of the road demons began convulsing as their implanted devices activated. Rebecca watched in horror as their bodies transformed, muscles densifying, skin hardening, eyes taking on an unnatural glow. The experimental technology was turning them into living weapons. Magnificent, isn't it? Fleming's pride overrode his concern. Complete cellular reconstruction in seconds, though the mental effects can be unpredictable. Through the security feeds, Rebecca saw several enhanced guards attacking their own teammates, lost to the rage induced by their rapid transformation. Her medical training identified the signs of massive neural overload. These men were literally burning out their minds for temporary superhuman abilities. Outside, David's team encountered their first enhanced opponent. The former road demon shrugged off 2 taser hits and a beanbag round, advancing with inhuman speed. Impact rounds ineffective. His team reported subject showing massive adrenaline enhancement and some kind of organic armor aimed for the interface points. David commanded spotting the surgical scars, where the devices connected to the spine disrupt the integration sites. Detective Santos's voice crackled through their cowls, finally restored. David, you've got bigger problems. Those new tactical teams, they're not government. Traced their communications. They're corporate Terminus Securities, the private military contractor. David had encountered them during his SEAL operations, high-end mercenaries who specialized in classified research protection. Bigger than that, Terminus is owned by a holding company called Phoenix Medical Solutions. Guess who sits on their board? Gerald Fleming. Inside, Rebecca caught fragments of Fleming's increasingly agitated phone calls. The protocols are working. Yes. Combat effectiveness exceeded projections. No, we can't abandon the research. A new explosion rocked the building's foundation through the chaos. Rebecca noticed something about the enhanced guards' movements, a pattern in their neural deterioration. Each surge of superhuman ability was followed by increasing mental instability. Your enhancement process, she called to Fleming, keeping him talking while working on her restraints using a scalpel she palmed during the earlier confusion. The neural degradation isn't a bug, is it? It's a feature. You're burning out their higher brain functions to prevent them from turning against you. Fleming's smile turned cruel. Very observant. The first generation of subjects retained too much independence. This version creates perfect soldiers, superhuman capability combined with absolute obedience. Once the higher reasoning centers burn out, they follow orders without question until they die from systemic failure, a small price for advancement. And with your trauma expertise, we can extend their operational window significantly. Outside, David's team adapted to the enhanced opponents, using precision shots to disable the integration sites. But the Terminus security forces complicated things, bringing military hardware and tactical experience to the fight. Multiple teams can converging. His sniper reported, these guys are pros. Wait, something's wrong with their movement patterns. David zoomed his tactical display, noting the unnaturally precise coordination of the Terminus teams. They're enhanced too, but their control seems better, more stable. Second-generation subjects, Santos confirmed, digging through encrypted files. Phoenix Medical has been running a parallel program, more refined, but lower yield, trading raw power for control. Inside, Fleming received new orders that made him pale. Understood. Implementing Protocol Omega, he turned to his medical team. Prep for emergency extraction. Download all research data, then initiate purge protocols. His eyes fixed on Rebecca, starting with our loose ends. But Rebecca had already noticed something critical. The enhanced guards' degrading mental state made them susceptible to basic medical triggers. As a team approached to terminate her, she called out in a precise tone she'd used countless times in the ER code blue trauma bay. 3. The nearest enhanced guard, his medical background still buried in his deteriorating mind, responded automatically to the emergency code. He turned on Fleming's team, years of hospital security training overriding his current programming. The momentary chaos gave David's team their opening synchronized breaching charges blew every entrance simultaneously as SEAL operators entered from multiple angles, engaging the divided security forces with practiced precision. Ma'am, David's voice came through her stolen radio. About time for a family reunion. Rebecca smiled, finally cutting through the last of her restraints. Just dealing with some difficult patients. Son Fleming rushed for his private exit, clutching hard drives containing his research data, but he found his path blocked by Detective Santos, her badge in one hand, her pistol in the other. Going somewhere, Dr. Federal Task Force has some questions about your medical licenses. The enhanced guards were dangerous, but their deteriorating mental state made them uncoordinated. The Terminus teams were better controlled but lacked raw power. David's operators, working with precision and experience, systematically neutralized both threats. Rebecca reached Dr. Chen's surgical bed, quickly assessing his condition. The integration process had barely begun. There was still time to prevent permanent damage. Her ER experience kicked in as she stabilized him, already planning the treatment protocols they'd need for the other victims of Fleming's experiments. Building secured, David reported, entering the surgical suite. But we've got FBI, DEA, and 3 other agencies fighting over jurisdiction outside. This is bigger than anyone thought, much bigger. Santos added, securing Fleming. Phoenix Medical has researched sites across the country. This was just their proof of concept facility. Rebecca met her son's eyes, seeing the same determination that had driven him to become a SEAL, the same commitment to justice. She taught him as a child, "Then I guess our work isn't done." "Our work?" David raised an eyebrow. "You've got the tactical experience. I've got the medical knowledge. Together, we might be the only ones who can help these victims and expose what's really happening." She gestured to the enhanced subjects being carefully contained. "Someone needs to speak for them." Fleming laughed despite his handcuffs. "You have no idea what you're up against. Phoenix Medical has resources you can't imagine: government contracts, military connections." Maybe Rebecca cut him off, but they've never dealt with a Motherson team like us. As federal agents swarmed the facility, Rebecca and David began planning their next moves. The road demons had been just the surface. Now they had to expose the real criminals, the corporations and officials who saw human lives as acceptable sacrifices for profit and power. The night's fog was finally lifting over Harbor's Edge, but the real storm, the fight to expose Phoenix Medical and help their victims, was just beginning. Dawn broke over Harbor's Edge as federal agents secured the Kaner complex. Inside the makeshift medical bay, Rebecca worked methodically to stabilize the enhanced subjects. Her 20 years of trauma experience proving crucial as she dealt with conditions no medical textbook had ever covered. "Neural interface degradation is accelerating," she reported, checking monitors attached to a former Road Demons member. "The technolog is literally burning through their nervous systems. Without intervention, they've got hours at most." David stood nearby, coordinating with his team while keeping a protective eye on his mother. At 26, he'd seen his share of battlefield trauma, but this was different. These men weren't just injured, they were being transformed from the inside out. "We've got company," Detective Santos announced, entering the medical bay. "CDC, DRBA, and military medical teams are inbound. Everyone wants a piece of this research. They can't move these patients." Rebecca insisted. "The interface technology is too unstable. Any disruption could trigger a cascade failure." Fleming, still handcuffed but smirking, spoke up from his guarded position. "That's the point, isn't it? Dead men tell no tales, and dead test subjects can't testify about who authorized their enhancements." David noticed his mother's expression changed, the same look she'd get when solving a particularly difficult medical case. "Mom, what are you thinking?" "The degradation pattern," she said, pulling up medical readouts. "It's not random. The technology isn't just failing, it's been programmed to fail, a built-in termination protocol." Santos checked her phone, frowning. "That tracks with what we're finding. Phoenix Medical's other research sites are going dark. Facilities being cleared, records erased. They're burning everything, including their test subjects." Rebecca added grimly, "These men might be criminals, but they're still my patients. I took an oath." A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the windows, they saw multiple black SUVs arriving, men in suits taking control from the federal agents. One figure stood out, a woman in an expensive business suit, moving with the authority of someone used to commanding rooms. "Director Elizabeth Hawthorne Santos," whispered Phoenix Medical CEO. "She's supposed to be testifying before Congress about military medical contracts." Clearly,